Number 10. The Paradise Tree Snake. The Paradise Tree Snake is unique for one very interesting reason. It's able to press its body completely flat, almost to a point that it becomes concave, which allows it to project itself into thin air from high branches while twisting its body. This gives it the ability to move swiftly from one tree to the next. The snake's slender body is extremely long, at about 3.5 feet in length, and it can be found in many parts in Myanmar, southern Thailand, Malaysia and Singapore. And while this snake is considered extremely rare to most people, it's actually quite common depending where you live in these countries. The snake has a very weak venom, only able to immobilize small prey like lizards that live in the mangrove trees. As for humans, they don't really have much of an issue with these types of snakes. Because they're able to press their bodies so flat and maneuver high up in the trees, it's highly likely you will ever see one anyway. Number 9. Emerald Tree Boa. The Emerald Tree Boa is another amazing snake that lives high up in the forest canopy. Adults are able to grow upwards of 6 feet in length, and they only weigh around 2 to 4 pounds. The largest one ever found was over 10 feet, though this has not been confirmed. Each Emerald Tree Boa has bright eyes and a bright green body, like patterned scale jewels with zigzagging white stripes that almost resemble lightning bolts. It's considered one of the most gorgeous snakes in all of South America. The snake's belly is yellow. It has a bulky head and large heat-sensing pits underneath its upper lip, which it uses to track warm-blooded prey. It spends most of its days wrapped around tree branches waiting for something yummy to pass by. But what makes the Emerald Tree Boa so magnificent other than its bright colouring is the fact that it has very long teeth, which it uses to hold onto prey while strangling them to death with its muscly body. The big danger to humans when it comes to the Emerald Tree Boa is that they are basically invisible amongst the rest of the jungle foliage. They live all throughout the Amazon, including regions of Brazil and Colombia, and sometimes they hang so low from branches that people don't see them until it's too late and the snake has already planted its jaws into their face. How scary would that be? The only good news is that the Emerald Tree Boa is not poisonous and is not nearly as dangerous or as large as the green anaconda. Number 8. The Eastern Hognose Snake. The Eastern Hognose Snake is one of the uglier snakes on today's list. It ranges in colour from white and dirty brown as an adolescent to fully black and then eventually to orange and black. Still, it's a fantastic creature. One of the coolest facts about the Eastern Hognose Snake is that it can actually play dead when in danger, much like an opossum. It sometimes hisses or flares up like a rattlesnake, but it's not poisonous or dangerous, and the Eastern Hognose is well aware of it. To keep itself out of trouble, the snake will play dead whenever you try to pick it up. It might look scary, but it's actually just a big baby. These snakes roam through southern Canada, all the way to Georgia and even South Carolina. They live primarily in woodlands, and when they decide to play dead, they will literally flip themselves onto their backs as if they just got electrocuted and go completely motionless. Since these snakes aren't venomous or dangerous, would you ever pick one up? Let me know in the comments section below, and don't forget to give this video a like and click that subscribe button. Number 7. The Rainbow Snake. The rainbow snake was named for one pretty obvious reason, because it's completely rainbow coloured. The snake isn't actually that big, but it is covered in red, blue, yellow and black, and in the light it looks like the most colourful snake on earth. These creatures are nocturnal and mostly feed on American eels, earning them the nickname eel moccasins, as they're able to swim through bodies of water just like eels. Adult rainbow snakes can grow to be upwards of 4 feet in length. They have very thick bodies and are some of the rarest snakes found through the northern peninsula of... where do you think? Florida, of course. According to Florida Museum's Snake ID Guide, these flamboyant serpents are not actually a danger to people or pets, as they mostly keep to themselves and hang out in the rivers. These docile snakes often won't bite in defense. If cornered or approached, rainbow snakes will often remain perfectly still or slither away slowly. If captured, they may press the pointed but harmless tail tip against the attacker. When they do this, they may release foul-smelling musk from 2 glands on the base of the tail. Still, you probably wouldn't want to meet one while taking a dip. Number 6. Two-headed Serpent. Florida wildlife officials recently came into possession of a two-headed snake after it was discovered by a family living in Palm Harbor. If a snake with 2 heads isn't rare or unique, I don't know what is. This weird slithery guy is a southern black racer, and it's something known as bicephalic, which means it has 2 heads on its body. This is likely the result of twins failing to separate while in the embryo stage of development, at least according to Florida's Fish and Wildlife Research Institute. The twin snakes didn't separate, and the ultimate result was that one body was created with the heads of both the twins. Here's where things get really cool. The heads are both able to flick their tongues, and each head will react to any nearby movement. But the heads react differently, responding in their own unique ways to the nearby stimuli. It's doubtful that this animal would ever survive in the wild, as the plain fact of having two brains trying to calculate decisions makes it almost impossible for the snake to hunt effectively. For now, it will be studied and cared for by the professional Florida wildlife officials. But I wonder, if one of the heads eats, do they both feel full since they have the same body? Think about it. Number 5. Spiny bush viper. The spiny bush viper is without a doubt the coolest looking snake that we're going to talk about today. These vipers are native to Central Africa, and they can be found in a few different rainforests, and they are extremely venomous. They have spiny scales on them that kind of look like hundreds of mini leaves. They're vivid green and black, and just one look tells you how dangerous they are. These do not look like snakes you would ever want to mess with. Even though they only grow up to about 2.5 feet long, with a currently unknown lifespan, they look especially mean. Just like the emerald tree boa that we talked about earlier. The spiny bush viper is arboreal, meaning it prefers to hang out on low-hanging branches. If you were to accidentally walk by and bump into one of these snakes, it could bite and kill you. Its venom is neurotoxic, and it can cause your organs to hemorrhage. It's a pretty nasty way to die. Bush vipers are related to rattlesnakes and other vipers found throughout Asia, but they have one very cool feature. Spiny bush vipers have something called a prehensile tail, which lets them grip branches so tightly that they can hang completely upside down to catch prey. This isn't something other snake species can do. Number 4. AlbinoSpectacled Cobra. An AlbinoSpectacled Cobra has recently been found in India, and according to the New Indian Express, it is one of the only albino cobras ever seen by human eyes. Albino cobras are apparently in the top 10 of the rarest albino animals in the world, making them by far the rarest and most unique snakes on the list today. Spectacled cobras themselves are extremely rare, but albinism in snakes is almost unheard of. It's like if the Yeti mixed with the Loch Ness Monster. That's the level of rarity I'm talking about here. It's not super clear right now exactly how this albino spectacled cobra came to be, but most scientists can agree it was probably just a freak genetic incident, and one we might not ever see again. If you're wondering what the difference is between a spectacled cobra and a king cobra, the latter is the largest and most dangerous of the cobra species. The spectacled cobra is still highly dangerous and should never be handled, though it is the favourite of snake charmers throughout India. Number 3. The Couch Constrictor. A boa constrictor was recently discovered by a man in Kansas while he was just simply looking for his keys and his couch cushions. This is a true nightmare of a story. The boa constrictor definitely isn't the rarest snake anywhere on the planet, but when one of them is living inside of somebody's couch cushions, that's a whole different story. According to ABC 7 Chicago, the snake was about 7 feet in length, and it may have been living inside this guy's couch for weeks or even months. This guy must apparently have the most comfortable couch in the world, right? The only reason the snake was even found is because the man woke up in the morning, realised he couldn't find his keys, and thought they might have been wedged between the couch cushions. It happens, but this guy was no snake handler. He called in the police to help remove the animal, which ended up being surprisingly calm and gentle. It was removed without incident, though nobody could figure out how a giant boa constrictor managed to sneak into the guy's couch, never mind go unnoticed for weeks and weeks. Authorities are now telling people to make sure they always check under their couches and under their beds, as you never know what kind of snakes, spiders, or other horrifying monsters are down there waiting for you. Number 2. St. Lucia racer snake. It's time to look at the rarest snake in the world, quite literally. The St. Lucia racer is a small, non-venomous snake that lives, as you can probably guess, on the island of St. Lucia. There are estimated to be less than 20 of these snakes still remaining in the wild, making the St. Lucia racer the rarest snake in the world. They live on a small islet of about 9 hectares named Maria Major, and this small islet is also home to 90% of yet another critically endangered species of reptile, the St. Lucia whiptail lizards. The racer snakes are so horribly threatened that they're basically just a few years from extinction. But there is hope. Scientists are trying to breed these rare snakes with another species known as the Antiguan racer. Hopefully, they can bring this rare and beautiful animal back from the edge of oblivion. Number 1. Aruba Island Rattlesnake. The Aruba Island rattlesnake is considered to be the rarest rattlesnake in the entire world, according to Animal Diversity Web. They were once found all over the island of Aruba, as well as a few other islands in the West Indies, but they are now confined to just a single spot of the region, as tourism and development have pretty much wiped them out. They live in the rocky and arid hillsides on the southern end of Aruba, in a small area only 12 square miles. Luckily, this land is currently protected, so the snakes are not in any immediate danger of being wiped out. Still, they're ridiculously rare and hard to spot. As with other types of rattlesnakes, these serpents have heavy bodies, rectangular heads, and a tail that rattles. They also have diamond-shaped markings like rattlesnakes that you'd find throughout the United States. Considering they live in such a remote place, Aruba Island rattlesnakes don't actually have any natural predators. They're at the top of the food chain in Aruba, and they feed on whatever they want. They are highly venomous, and their diet consists mostly of birds and lizards, and even a few rodents. They have something known as proteolytic enzymes in their venom, which work to begin digesting prey immediately, breaking down the structural components of organic tissue. Basically, this rattlesnake melts its victim's flesh when it injects its venom. Yikes! Number 10. The Toad Freak. The Suriname toad is at first glance absolutely bizarre. The toad is so flat and triangular that it looks more like a rock sitting at the bottom of a river. It also has strange star-shaped fingertips, which has earned it the nickname the star-fingered toad. But beyond its weird appearance, this freaky toad has an absolutely bizarre reproductive strategy that makes it one of the creepiest things found in nature. Unlike most toads, this one has an extremely strange way of carrying its babies. A female will release anywhere between 60 and 100 eggs to be fertilized by a male toad. But that's where the similarities end. The female will then push the fertilized eggs onto her back, where they stick to her skin. Then her skin grows around the eggs, creating a disgusting structure that kind of looks like a honeycomb filled with little tiny pockets. She literally absorbs her eggs into her back. And then when it's time for the eggs to hatch, the little toad babies crawl out of holes in her skin. It's absolutely brutal to watch as the little toadlets squirm from the makeshift hive on their mother's back. But believe it or not, this is actually an amazing evolutionary advantage, as the eggs can't be eaten by predators. By the time the little toads hatch, they are already able to begin hunting, and the mother then sheds her skin and is ready to do it all over again. Number 9. Poison trees. One of the most horrifying and creepy things found in nature is something known as the Australian stinging tree. This disturbing tree looks just like any other you might find in the wilderness of Australia, but it has a dangerous secret. The leaves on the poison tree are a little fuzzy, but otherwise not out of the ordinary. It's only if you look very closely that you can see the fuzziness of the leaves is actually a whole lot of tiny needles. These tiny needles are filled with a fluid that can have the same effects on a human person as scorpion venom. In fact, the needles on the tree act like hypodermic needles to inject you with incredibly dangerous poison. And in a new study done by pain researchers at the University of Queensland, scientists found out that the tree leaves produce a type of neurotoxin previously unidentified by scientists. This neurotoxin targets the pain receptors in a human being in the exact same way the venom delivered by a spider or scorpion does. Locally, the stinging tree is known as the gimpy gimpy tree, and a single touch can leave you with a pain like you wouldn't believe. The pain actually goes on for hours, days, and even weeks. Just having a shower can leave you in crippling, burning and stinging pain as the water hits the spots where the tree injected its poison. But what's truly interesting is that researchers believe that the tree developed its poison stingers as a defense mechanism, just like insects with stingers. As it turns out, trees are smarter than they look. Could you imagine getting stung by a tree? Have you ever been attacked by nature? Let me know in the comments below. Then, remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already for more intense videos just like this one. Number 8. Tentacle Madness. On a permanent display at the Shima Marineland Aquarium in Japan, there is the creepiest and most disturbing octopus specimen ever found on the planet. An octopus usually has 8 tentacles attached to its body. However, the specimen in Japan has 88 additional tentacles, making it a 96 tentacled octopus and a true freak of nature. The story goes that the octopus was captured in 1998 off the coast of Japan. It was captured alive and even managed to lay eggs in captivity, and is to date the only mutant octopus who has ever done so. All of the baby octopuses hatched with the appropriate number of tentacles, but none of them survived over a month. And as for the mutant mother, she only survived about 5 months after being captured. But you probably want to know about all the tentacles. How is sprouting 96 tentacles possible? Well, each extra tentacle was actually an extension of the octopus's normal 8 tentacles. They were just branches growing off the main arms. One of the theories is that the octopus may have sustained some kind of injury, and then during her process of regeneration, an abnormality occurred that caused her to sprout a whole lot of extra appendages. Number 7. Bird tornado. If you're the kind of person who's scared of birds, you'll probably be absolutely horrified by what I'm about to say. There is a creepy phenomenon known as a birdnado, and it's 100% real. It's basically a bird tornado, with thousands upon thousands of birds swirling in a funnel hundreds of feet up in the sky in a destructive vortex of beaks and wings. It's definitely the scariest thing anyone who doesn't like birds can come across. Scientifically, the birdnado is known as a murmuration, and it's what happens when a flock of thousands of starlings fly together in a tornado-like formation. Starlings are extremely common in both North America and Europe, and they are infamous for getting together in huge flocks, some of which can contain up to 4 million birds. The reason this hurricane of birds is possible is because starlings are able to track the exact movements of 7 birds around them while flying in a flock. With thousands of them working together, they can easily streak across the sky in a swirling hurricane, and this apparently offers them protection from predators and lessens the amount of energy needed to fly. And while it's unlikely that a bird tornado will rip through your town and destroy your house, there is a huge issue with the birds droppings left behind during one of these formations. A swirling tornado of thousands of birds leaves behind tens of thousands of bird droppings. It's like a poop whirlwind. Number 6. The T-Rex infection. Sue the T-Rex was the most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil ever found. To this day, she is arguably the most famous dinosaur in the world, housed currently at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. But this big and savage dinosaur had a rather disturbing affliction during her life over 66 million years ago. Sue may have had a shocking oral infection caused by some kind of prehistoric parasite. Not only that, but researchers are now suggesting that Sue the T-Rex may be the first recorded case of an infection causing misshapen teeth in a large animal. To understand this a bit more, let's take a look at the teeth of a T-Rex. They were absolutely huge. A typical T-Rex had teeth the size of bananas and would have been able to grow new teeth every 1 or 2 years. When teeth fell out, a T-Rex would just grow new ones. But with Sue, she had 3 malformed teeth found inside of her mouth, and researchers from the University of Manitoba have concluded that she suffered from something known as trichomoniasis, which today is a disease that sometimes spreads to chickens and other birds. This disease would have caused the dinosaur to be in serious misery. Sue probably had such horrible tooth pain that she could no longer eat or drink near the end of her life. It's honestly just a little creepy to think that even millions of years ago, tooth infections were the bane of life on Earth. Number 5. Toad with eyes in its mouth. A very disturbing toad was found living inside of a garden by 2 small girls in Canada. The toad suffered from an extreme genetic phenomenon that biologists refer to as macromutation. This particular macromutation had the toad being born with its eyeballs in the roof of its mouth. Its eyes were literally inside of its mouth. Macromutations almost always have a significant impact on whichever organism they affect, and they usually occur because of a regulatory gene that structures something improperly. And in fact, some biologists suggest that macromutations can explain certain biological adaptations. For example, if toads survived better with eyeballs inside of their mouths, the macromutation could become the norm for toads, and it would have happened in one single genetic leap. But despite all the scientific intrigue, a toad with eyeballs in its mouth is still seriously disturbing. It's not clear whether the toad could see through its mouth, though the man who actually took the photograph of the animal did say that when the toad opened its mouth, it seemed to become increasingly aware of its surroundings. For now, we can chalk this up as a freak mutation. Number 4. The Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap is by far the creepiest plant found anywhere in nature. It just looks horrifying. This plant blooms in the spring and feasts on living insects with its menacing jaws of death. The plant consists of hinged leaves growing out on stalks, with each leaf looking like a mouth. When the leaf is touched, it springs shut and traps little bugs inside of it, which then slowly die and are broken down by digestive acids and enzymes. The Venus flytrap basically makes a soup out of the insects it catches and then slurps that soup into its body. It takes about 7 days to fully digest an insect, at which point the trap will open again and wait for another victim. Each trap is able to eat between 5 and 7 insects before it dies. But don't worry, the Venus flytrap will continue to produce traps for as long as it lives. And here's what a lot of people don't know. The Venus flytrap is actually American made. The only place where the Venus flytrap grows naturally is in North and South Carolina in a handful of boggy areas. People generally think this plant comes from some kind of crazy place in the Amazon jungle, but it's simply not true. It's a 100% USA plant, and the creepiest in the world. Number 3. The disgusting bristle worm. One of the most disgusting animals in nature calls Antarctica home. I'm talking about an 8-inch long worm called Eulogisca gigantea. The organism is a type of marine worm equipped with golden bristles that it uses for swimming, for creeping along the floor of the ocean, and for defending itself. Looking at the worm close up is quite frankly disturbing. The worm has what's known as a retractable pharynx, which is basically a retractable mouth full of fangs that it pushes out of its body when it needs to eat. It's like an earthworm mixed with a xenomorph mixed with a bristle brush. It's the worst thing imaginable, and it's longer than most people's hands. In some species, the bristles are even able to absorb venom, making them not only creepy, but also venomous. Number 2. The blood-eyed lizard. The horned lizard is perhaps the rudest, strangest, and most disgusting creep in the animal kingdom. The horned lizard spends most of its time sitting alone, completely motionless and basking in the desert sun. It only grows to be around 5 inches in length. It has a crown of horns on its head that makes it look a lot like a dragon, and it happens to be a rather attractive snack for a hungry coyote. In the case of a coyote attack, the blood will squirt straight on the coyote's tongue and deliver such a blast of horrible flavour that the coyote will drop the lizard from its mouth and stagger backwards in disgust. Even though the horned lizard has mottled skin that helps it to blend into its surroundings, it's still often caught by predators. But wait, because here's where the creepiness of the horned lizard really becomes useful. When a predator tries to grab hold of the lizard will squirt blood from its eyes directly into the predator's mouth. The blood tastes so gross that predators have no choice but to retreat, while the completely uninjured lizard runs away. But you may be wondering how exactly a lizard is able to squirt blood from its eyes. According to an in-depth report on horned lizards by the BBC, there is a pouch beneath the reptile's eyes which swells and fills with blood. There is then a sudden surge of pressure inside the blood pouch, which works like a balloon filled with too much water. The pouch ruptures and blood squirts out in a stream that can travel a distance of nearly 6 feet. Imagine that! Number 1. Choking on a duck. Even if you're a fish lover, you have to admit that fish are kind of gross. Fish are some of the most ridiculous things that occur in nature, and so it's no surprise that some of the things they do are extraordinarily creepy. Take for example this 25-pound pike that tried to swallow an entire duck and died in the attempt, killing itself and the poor duck. This happened at Loch of Lowes in Scotland, when the fish surged up from the bottom of the loch, tried to gobble down the duck in one big gulp, then got the bird stuck in its mouth and choked to death. The greedy pike was later found by a man out for a leisurely nature walk, who certainly hadn't expected to stumble across such a weird scene. The fish had somehow washed up on the edge of the loch after its botched meal. But this isn't the only instance of pike being really creepy and greedy. According to locals, pike are notorious for their large appetites, with some people even reporting pikes surging out of the water and trying to swallow small dogs. The pike even has a tongue like sandpaper that helps it to drag unsuspecting animals into its hungry gullet. The largest one ever caught in Scotland was over 47 pounds, way back in 1947. Number 10. Sharp tiger tongues. Tigers have some very cool tongues. They're not normal tongues like ours, but they're actually dangerous. One thing almost nobody knows about tigers is that their tongues are covered with small spiky things called papillae. They are only visible if you really zoom in on the cat's tongue. These spikes are sharp, they face backwards, and they give the tiger's tongue a sandpaper-like texture, which allows the big cats to strip feathers and fur off their prey. They could even strip the skin off their prey if they got a hold of you and really wanted to. This is how a tiger gets the hair and fluff off of its victims. But a tiger will also use its rough tongue to clean its own fur and to give its cubs a gentle bath. If you were to be licked by a tiger, it wouldn't necessarily rip up your skin, but it definitely wouldn't feel good. Imagine a piece of sandpaper or Velcro rubbing against your skin with the force of a strong tiger. The tongue of a tiger is so strong thanks to its papillae that it can rip the meat off an animal's bones with just 1 or 2 licks. If it can do that to an animal, just imagine how it would devour a popsicle. Number 9. Sleepy snails. Snails are the best sleepers in the animal kingdom. Bears might be famous for hibernation, but they have nothing on land snails. Certain types of snails are able to sleep for up to 3 years. That's a pretty powerful nap. A snail will only sleep for this long under very poor conditions. The thing is that snails need moisture to live. If the weather turns bad and there isn't enough moisture in the air and not enough rain coming down to keep the snails wet or at least moist, they will go to sleep for as long as it takes. This is especially true in warmer climates, as the snail will fall asleep to escape the summer heat and not wake up until the conditions are ideal. But the way the snail sleeps is equally as fascinating. A snail will secrete mucus all over its entire body to protect itself from the hot weather. It's basically like if you covered yourself in snot and then fell asleep for a couple of years. It might sound comfy to a snail, but it's pretty disgusting for us humans. Additionally, snails don't sleep based on day and night. They have random sleep schedules that involve them snoozing for anywhere from 13 to 15 hours a day, waking up with a huge burst of energy that can last for up to 30 hours. Imagine if you could do that. Would you want to be able to sleep for 15 hours and then stay up for 30? What would you do with that superpower? Let me know in the comments. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already, and get ready for more interesting videos just like this one. Number 8. Slow motion squirrels. In a shocking discovery made by researchers at the Trinity College in Dublin, it turns out that small animals like birds, dogs, and even human children see the world at a higher frame rate than the average adult. The smallest animals, such as squirrels, may actually be looking at the world through a permanent state of slow motion, in which everything around them appears to be moving dramatically slower than what you or I would perceive. Experts are saying this slow motion vision may be the result of small animals and insects needing to avoid larger predators. By seeing the world in slow motion, animals like squirrels have a better chance of escaping certain doom. To kind of put this into perspective, researchers are saying that in the eyes of a squirrel, a human would appear to be a lumbering giant moving in short, awkward steps. However, the normal daily activities for a squirrel would appear to be completely normal. This is kind of how, when we look at a squirrel, we see it moving in fast, twitchy, and highly spasmodic motions. Smaller animals appear to us to be far more hyperactive, whereas things like elephants are clearly lumbering giants. The way that we see an elephant moving slowly towards us is probably the way that a squirrel sees humans, and the elephant probably sees us as twitchy little squirrels. That's absolutely wild. It might be related to the fact that larger animals have longer nerves from their limbs into their brains, so that the stimuli from their environments reach their brains more slowly. That means they had to slow down their brain's processing power in order to see the world and feel the world in sync. But it also means that when little kids scream and cry after being told to be quiet for 10 minutes, it's because they think 10 minutes is an eternity. It really makes you think, right? Number 7. Penguin proposals. Penguins are the most romantic animals in the entire world, even surpassing humans in terms of romance. One of the strangest things that people don't know about penguins, specifically Adelie and Gentoo penguins, is that the male will literally propose to a female. We already know that penguins mate for life, but researchers have now figured out that in order to get that lifetime relationship started, the male penguin needs to propose. And it does this in a super adorable way. A male penguin will scour the beach to find the smoothest pebble around. The pebble will then be handed off to the penguin's favourite female as a gift, sort of like how a man might propose to a lady with a diamond ring. If the female penguin is willing to get married, she will accept the pebble and place it inside of her nest. And from that moment on, the two penguins are married. But wait, because this isn't all flowers and roses. There is something known as pebble envy among male penguins. When some male penguins can't find smooth rocks of their own to give to their prospective wives, they will sometimes steal them from others and present them as their own. Number 6. Upside down flamingos. Flamingos have extremely long necks, which makes what I'm about to say so much harder to believe. The truth is that flamingos are only able to eat when they're upside down. It's like saying you can only eat when you're standing on your head. According to National Geographic, flamingos feast by stirring up food from the bottom of lakes. They dip their bill into the water, slurp up all the crustaceans, brine, insects, and fish that they can find. Then they use their tongue like a pump to push out the water while keeping the food in their beak. But this process can only be done while the flamingo has its head upside down. If it scooped up a mouthful of food and then lifted its neck straight, the functions necessary to filter the water from the food wouldn't work. It absolutely must be upside down if it wants to properly eat, and that's a little weird. Number 5. Bats can't walk. Have you ever noticed that you have never seen a bat walking? You've definitely only ever seen a bat hanging upside down, clinging to the side of something or flapping around with its wings. And it turns out that this is because bats are literally unable to walk. Now get ready for an explosion of facts. First of all, bats are the only mammals able to fly. Their bodies are designed to be aerodynamic with ultra-light bones and very thin wings. There are about 24 joints inside of a bat's wings, and their wings are covered with specialized touch-sensitive cells like the ones on our fingertips. And now here's the deal with its legs. Bats have such thin bones that if they were to stand on their legs would shatter. Their legs are basically useless. Their knees also face backwards. If a bat accidentally ends up on the ground, the only thing it can do is to use its front limbs to drag the rest of its body until it finds a place where it can fly again. However, there are indeed two species of bats that are able to walk. The vampire bat and the burrowing bat are able to walk, with the vampire bat able to sprint using all four legs in an awkward way. However, this is only 2 species out of 1,200. Almost all bats are immobile if they can't fly. Isn't that strange? Number 4. Sea otters hold hands. You may have seen pictures and videos online of otters holding hands, and you may have wondered how much truth there is to the images. And the truth is that otters do indeed hold hands. Sea otters actually hold hands while sleeping to prevent themselves from floating away and getting lost. Sea otters spend the majority of their time in the water, sleeping and hunting and mating. They even give birth in the water. However, it's still possible for them to get lost or to float away too far from the rest of their family when they close their eyes and go to sleep. So, sea otters either anchor themselves in place by getting tangled up in some kelp or seaweed, or they hold hands with a buddy so that they act as each other's anchors. It's adorable and also helpful for survival. Number 3. Drunk chimps. Chimpanzees have figured out how to drink alcohol. Just like their human cousins, chimps have taken a serious liking to getting a little bit drunk. Scientists studying chimpanzees in Guinea have discovered evidence of repeated ingestion of ethanol by chimpanzees. The study went on for 17 years, with researchers repeatedly witnessing chimps using leaves to drink fermented palm sap. Somewhere along the line, chimpanzees figured out that if they drink enough of the palm sap, it will get them inebriated. This study was published in the journal Royal Society Open Science, and it showed that the chimpanzees would climb trees in large social groups to drink naturally fermented palm sap, using leaves like sponges to soak up the sap and then slurp up its alcoholic contents. The research team from Oxford Brookes University discovered that the sap contained about 3% alcohol by volume, which, after a significant amount of observation, translated to certain chimps drinking about a full bottle of wine. The researchers also claimed that the chimpanzees showed signs of being drunk, and many of them would fall asleep immediately after drinking copious amounts of the sap. Number 2. Elephant thumbsuckers. In more adorable news, it turns out that baby elephants are indeed babies. What I mean by this is that baby elephants actually suck on their trunks, just like baby humans suck on their thumbs. What's even more interesting is that they do it for the exact same reason. Just like how human newborns suck on their thumbs for comfort, so too do baby elephants suck on their trunks. What's even stranger is that elephant calves are born with powerful sucking reflexes, which allow them to instinctively know what to do when it's time for feeding. And because sucking equals food, sucking also equals comfort. This is why you can often find baby elephants wandering around sucking on their trunks, looking ridiculously cute. Number 1. The cat's meow. If you've ever wondered why your cat is meowing but have been too lazy to Google it, get ready to be amazed. A cat will meow specifically to communicate with a person. It is 100% true that cats, at least adult cats, do not meow at each other. They only use vocalization to communicate with human beings. Kittens will meow only to let their mother know that if they happen to be hungry or cold. But when a kitten becomes an adult cat, it ceases to meow to other cats. They only meow because they want something from you. However, don't let meowing be confused with yowling, as these are two totally different things. The yowl is a more high-pitched and whiny kind of noise that cats make when it's breeding season and they're ready to do some feline mating. But you're probably wondering why some cats meow more than others. The truth is that nobody really knows. Cats meow at people for 4 main reasons. Cats will meow in greeting, literally saying hello when they walk into a room. Cats will meow to solicit attention when they want to be played with or talked to. And of course, cats will meow when they want food or when they want to be let inside or outside. Number 8. Massive bullshark in Florida. Fishing charters are a big business in Florida, so when a local company in Myrtle Beach took a group of tourists out to reel in the catch of the day, they got a little more than they bargained for. It took 2 whole hours to reel in what grabbed a hold of one of the lines from the charter boat. Those on board that wrestled with the catch on the end of the line were rewarded with a massive 10.4 foot long and a 5 foot wide bullshark. The charter owners at Hubbard Marina used these commercial trips to teach tourists about fishing and the local fishery, so netting the shark was a surprise. So too was the outcome. Rather than releasing the shark, as the owners prefer to do, the client had the final say and opted to kill the apex predator. With so many sharks in nearby waters, remarkably the charter company has been hosting these types of excursions since they opened in the late 1920s. Believing that the sharks should be released to avoid endangering the local ecosystem by killing off the predators, the charter captain eventually relented and let the tourists take the shark home, presumably for food. One silver lining of the excursion is that once the animal is used for food, its remains are given to local scientists who study it. Caught about a mile off Egmont Key in Florida, the bull shark is just one of a number of species one might encounter while boating in the area. Sandbar sharks, tiger sharks and bull sharks have all been captured and released by the company over the years. Number 7. Canadian Mako shark. Not all big shark catches happen in the United States. For an angler in Nova Scotia, Canada, it was quite the run-in with an 11-foot long shark that has made him a household name among locals. But it was the 2004 photo of his catch that went viral. An annual event with local fishermen in Yarmouth has fishing enthusiasts head out to the open sea to see who can catch the largest shark. Money raised at the event goes to local charities and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to fund their research. At the 2004 event, a 28-year-old named Jamie Doucette captured a 10-foot female Mako shark that weighed in at over 1,000 pounds. After battling the shark for more than 40 minutes, Doucette and his crew were able to bring the shark on board, but that was just the beginning of the tale. As the hooked shark surged to the surface, it chewed through the steel leader the men used to capture it. They then tried wrapping it in ropes around its torso and tail, but the shark was not having that either and chewed through the knots. As the men battled the Mako, one of the crew members gave it an unceremonious end by slitting its throat, after which the shark died within 20 minutes. But that would not be the end of this shark's tale. For some reason, as the photo circulated online, others picked up the story and claimed to have seen the catch occur in places as far away as Galveston, Texas, Chesapeake Bay and Washington State. No one knows exactly why the shark caught in a small town around Nova Scotia became such an internet sensation, but the tale continues to be one that still resurfaces over a decade later, usually, unsurprisingly, during Shark Week. How many of you are fans of Shark Week? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 6. Great white shark in the Sea of Cortez. Just off the coast of Baja, California, 2 fishermen were tending to some nets they had dropped the night before when they found something huge lurking in the waters. First noticing the incredible weight in the net as they hauled it back to the surface, they found the dead great white and brought it back to shore. Expecting to find a net filled with a bunch of small fish, they were shocked to discover a great white shark had got stuck instead. Reportedly around 2,000 pounds and around 20 feet long. It might seem remarkable that such a large shark could have been caught by such a small net, but it isn't uncommon for great whites to swim in the area. The great white was found in an area that scientists believe sharks use as a nursery for its protected waters. In 2019, OCEARCH, an organisation that researches ocean data, reported that another 200-pound shark they had been tracking entered the Gulf of Mexico after swimming down the coast from Canada. By tracking animals like this, OCEARCH is able to learn where females give birth, and since the Sea of Cortez is known for a similar reason, it isn't difficult to assume that the shark caught by the 2 commercial fishermen was simply a female shark looking for a place to increase the species. Number 5. Myrtle Beach bull shark. For 40 years, one man's catch of a tiger shark off North Myrtle Beach remained a record holder. In 1964, a man named Walter Maxwell snagged his line in the mouth of a giant shark and spent the next 4 hours bringing the beast in. As curious onlookers watched, Maxwell slowly brought the shark closer to shore, so close he could almost touch it, and then his line broke. Vowing to stay there as long as it took to get another chance at hooking the shark, Maxwell talked one of his friends into paddling him out into the water. Armed with live bait, the men waited until just after sunrise when the large tiger shark came back. After almost taking off with Maxwell's line, the shark fought the men all afternoon and late into the night. For 5 hours, the man battled the shark, and when he finally got it close to the pier, his friends lent a hand, using heavy rope to hoist it onto a flatbed truck. It took until the next day to weigh the shark, but when they did, it came in at a whopping 1,780 pounds and stretching 13 feet long. It would take until 2004 for another angler to catch a shark bigger than this one, but for Walter Maxwell, his shark, even if it was slightly smaller, still has a tail that made the record books. Number 4. Giant Sharks of Baja. Although some of these stories might seem like they are too crazy to be true, there are quite a few areas in the world where not only these massive sharks live, but you can get up close and personal with them. Would you want to? Guadalupe Island, just south of San Diego, is one such place where you can book yourself a great white shark encounter. But don't think you have to fend for yourself against one of the world's largest predatory creatures. Those who take one of the 5-day trips will be able to cage dive with these giants of the sea. Because certified divers continue to bring shark enthusiasts for dives, the animals are quite accustomed to having humans swimming in close proximity. So much that the resident sharks have names. One of the sharks you might encounter include Deep Blue, a female that measures 20 feet long from tail to snout. Although the earliest visitors to the island were there to hunt for seals and sea lions, shark cage diving expeditions are now a popular tourist attraction. Sea lovers are able to explore the volcanic island and its rugged nature. With towering cliffs and raw beauty, Guadalupe Island serves as the perfect backdrop for a thrilling shark dive. The convergence of warm southern currents with cool northern swells are what make Guadalupe Island the perfect place to shark watch. With its abundance of fish, as well as fur seals, sea lions and elephant seals are what really attract sharks to the area. With more than 250 sharks counted at one time in Guadalupe's waters, the 100 feet of visibility, calm waters and warm water temperature make it the perfect place to witness one of the world's largest animals in the wild. Number 3. Record-breaking great white. In the mid-1980s, a carnival-like atmosphere surrounded the capture of what some believed to be the largest great white ever brought to shore. The 3,350-pound shark was found 25 miles south of Montauk in the Atlantic. A special scale had to be brought in to weigh the behemoth, with the International Game Fish Association coming in to certify and confirm the catch. Ironically, Donnie Braddock, the charter boat captain who battled the shark for 2 hours, was out in his boat with Frank Mundus, a man who some believe was the inspiration for the legendary shark hunter in the movie Jaws. Apparently, the men had been sailing earlier in the day and came across a dead whale that was being fed upon by sharks. Returning to the scene later, they laid out some chum in the water, hoping to lure a shark in for a closer look. Measuring almost 17 feet, the shark was beaten by a simple rod and reel that could sustain up to 150 pounds of strength. It was one of the largest great whites caught anywhere. The shark was set to be dissected and its stomach contents sent to the Museum of Natural History for study. Number 2. Cuban monster shark. When stories surface of supposed massive shark sightings, one usually takes the news with a grain of salt. A story that had been circulating since 1945 about an underwater monster was an easy one to question, but it would take over 70 years for the Discovery Channel to finally confirm any truth to the fishy tale. As the story goes, 6 fishermen set out from Cojimar in Cuba to look for the underwater animal that had been eating all their fish. Armed with only ropes and harpoons, the men set sail, eventually coming face to face with the culprit. After an epic struggle that lasted all night and the following day, they found that they had been battling with a 21-foot great white that weighed a whopping 7,000 pounds. So, it's no wonder they nicknamed it El Monstruo de Cojimar. It would be easy to dismiss this story, but when a Discovery Channel documentary crew decided to look into it, they eventually confirmed the validity of the monster. The problem? 15 years after the shark was caught, an embargo was set in place to protect a large portion of the Caribbean from American scientists. It would take until 2013 for the documentary crew to start work on their piece for the first hints of the truth to be revealed. The executive producer of the documentary had been in Cuba and marveled at its unspoiled beauty. Wanting to capture the splendor on film, he decided to pull together a crew of filmmakers and underwater cinematographers to bring his idea to life. Finally, after years of red tape, the crew started filming, working with shark scientists to track down a man, only 8 years old at the time, who had been around that fateful day when the massive shark was caught. After verifying the photo, scientists studied the shark, noticing that El Monstruo looked larger than any other 16-foot great white he had ever seen. Taking off to find other such sharks in the area, researchers tagged various sharks, including a rare longfin Mako. Using their data to study the 60 species of sharks found in Cuban waters, the scientists are able to further protect sharks that travel to other parts of the world. This goes to show you that the amazing stories like the one of El Monstruo can not only inspire, but protect the world's oceans and the precious animals that live within them. Number 1. Hammerhead versus Black-tip Shark. It isn't every day that fishermen capture a giant hammerhead shark on video. But when a couple of buddies were out fishing off the coast of Palm Beach, Florida, they not only caught the event on video, they captured an intense encounter between the two sharks. After hooking an 80-pound black-tip shark on their line, Hall of Fame golfer Greg Norman and Josh Jorgensen, producer of Blacktip H sports fishing channel on YouTube, the two were understandably excited. Little did they know that they were in for an even bigger catch. As they had the shark on their line, they noticed a massive hammerhead shark approaching their boat. Using a drone to watch overhead, the men were glued to the screen as the massive hammerhead circled the shark they'd captured. After taking a bite, the hammerhead shark swam away, only to come back again. This time though, it wasn't for a simple nibble. The hammerhead swallowed the other shark whole. The men were shocked and elated to have captured the footage. But that wasn't the end of the adventure. They still had the hammerhead on their line, and after drawing hundreds of yards of line from the wheel, the shark continued to put up a fight. It took 45 minutes for the men to reel the monster in, and when they did, they soon realised just how massive it really was. After capturing some photos of the behemoth, they measured the hammerhead at almost 15 feet long and weighed it at an astonishing 1,200 pounds. Before releasing the shark back into the wild, the men jumped into the water to swim alongside it to celebrate their thrilling encounter. Number 10. The deadly sea snake. One of the most dangerous creatures that lives in the water, believe it or not, is actually a snake. Sea snakes are very venomous, with poison potent enough to kill someone if they happen to be bitten. And that's exactly what happened to a man named Harry Evans, who was killed by a sea snake off the coast of Australia just a couple of years ago. Harry was the first trawler fisherman to be killed by a sea snake bite in Australia in over 80 years. It happened while the 23-year-old man from the United Kingdom was working on a prawn trawler. He somehow came in contact with the snake, it bit him, and according to an Australian Maritime Safety Authority spokesperson, the man was already dead by the time a rescue catamaran reached the trawling vessel at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Apparently, sea snakes are a common part of life as trawler fishermen. However, there is a certain way to handle these extremely deadly serpents that keeps most fishermen alive. This incident was a freak accident, and the venom delivered by the snake's fangs ended up causing Harry's painful and miserable death. Number 9. The Great Barracuda. The Great Barracuda is one of the deadlier fish that lives in the waters of North America. And while attacks on humans by barracudas may be rare, they can happen and it can be deadly. This is especially true for snorkelers and divers, as barracudas will often attempt to steal fish from spear fishermen or mistake shiny objects for the glint of fish scales, causing the barracuda to attack unsuspecting swimmers. Most attacks are fast, involving a single injury brought on because of a quick strike from the barracuda, potentially cutting someone's limbs open. But sometimes, the attack can be more brutal. According to the Florida Museum, there was an incident in the 1960s off the coast of Pompano Beach in which a diver was bitten twice and required at least 31 stitches. Now, a barracuda is obviously not as treacherous as a great white shark, but everybody knows that sharks are the most dangerous fish. Barracudas are a little sneakier than that, and are even dangerous outside of the water. Some people have reported getting incredibly sick after eating barracuda, with some experiencing gastrointestinal problems and weakness in their limbs for weeks at a time. I would stay far away from these fish as a rule of thumb, because they sound like more trouble than they're worth. Number 8. Jumbo Squid Terrorizer. Jumbo flying squid recently invaded the waters off the coast of San Diego, spooking scuba divers and scaring beachgoers after swimming up from the depths of the ocean and swarming unsuspecting civilians who just wanted to have a relaxing day at the beach. These carnivorous cephalopods are significantly smaller than giant squid, weighing only about 100 pounds. But that doesn't mean they're not terrifying. Imagine 9 slippery tentacles wrapping around your legs while you're trying to enjoy a bit of water polo. Some people even refer to these squids as red devils because their skin is the rust red colour of blood. That would be scary enough to make anyone pee their pants. The jumbo squid is known properly as the Humboldt squid, and they have been known to attack human beings. Divers wishing to observe these huge beasts of the deep are usually required to wear underwater chainmail and be safely secured inside of a special metal viewing cage. Otherwise, a person could be torn apart or lashed to death by the animal's strong tentacles. Of course, nobody had this protection when the jumbo squids invaded the beaches of San Diego. Humboldt squid typically hunt in schools of up to 1,200 individuals, and so it was no surprise that so many of them surged up at once. Luckily, nobody was injured, but there were still anecdotal tales of assaults and even some less serious maiming. What's the craziest aquatic animal you've ever seen? Which one do you think is the scariest? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already. Number 7. The Blue-Spotted Stingray. Ever since Steve Irwin was stabbed in the heart by a stingray, these underwater animals have had a pretty bad reputation. And while most stingrays are completely harmless, there is one particular species that is significantly more dangerous than the rest. This is the blue-spotted stingray, and when threatened, they can use their tail spine to deliver a gush of venom into an unsuspecting diver. It's not necessarily fatal, but the sting from a blue-spotted stingray can definitely be painful enough to cause a person to lose focus, to become displaced, and to possibly drown. Of course, these stingrays can be easily identified by the blue spots all over their bodies. They typically live about 70 feet underwater and can be found only in temperate and tropical waters. You'll almost never encounter one unless you happen to go diving and place your foot on the wrong spot. If one of these stingrays decides to stab you with its venomous tail, it's possible you'll never make it back to the surface again. Number 6. Giant Pyrosomes. One of the largest, most mysterious, and deadliest marine animals is something known as a giant pyrosome. If you haven't heard of a pyrosome before, nobody would blame you. These creatures are incredibly rare. Scientists almost never see them, and despite the fact they can grow to be hundreds of feet long, they have barely been documented. A pyrosome is basically a hollow, worm-like creature that can grow to be the size of a mammoth. Some have been recorded at lengths that rival the legendary sperm whale. But there's more to a pyrosome than just its size. It is also bioluminescent and will glow when touched by humans. This is exceptionally scary when you consider that a pyrosome basically looks like the extremely long tentacle of the biggest squid in existence. According to a recent report from New Scientist, marine experts are starting to believe that our oceans may be teeming with these giant animals, even if we almost never encounter them. There's almost nothing known about the giant pyrosome, other than the fact that it's not a single organism, but actually multiple colonies of individual creatures that have massed together to create one giant monster. It's not clear why these separate organisms have banded together, and nobody has been murdered by one of these huge glowing things just yet, but they are still wildly dangerous. If a pyrosome wrapped its huge 100-foot tentacle around you, it could easily strangle you to death. Number 5. An exploding whale. Sometimes, the most dangerous underwater creatures can cause damage on land. Take the incident from 2004, when a dead sperm whale exploded like a bomb in the middle of a busy Taiwan street and showered the nearby spectators, vehicles, and shops in a hurricane of blood and internal whale organs. The whale exploded with such force that it literally showered the entire city streets with blood and guts. It was such a huge mess that traffic ended up being stopped for hours. According to NBC News, this went down in the small city of Tainan, while the decomposing remains of the 56-foot-long whale had been en route to a research site. Unfortunately, the whale was a ticking time bomb. The gases created by the internal decay caused the whale to bloat, and then its entrails exploded outwards when the pressure inside was simply too much. Exploding whales can definitely happen, and you better hope you're not in line of fire when she blows. Number 4. The flower urchin. The flower urchin doesn't even look like a real animal, and yet it is one of the most dangerous creatures underwater. It is in fact the most venomous sea urchin in the world. This urchin is covered in thousands of tiny triangular and circular structures known as pedicellariae. These seemingly harmless structures are actually venomous claws. When the pedicellariae is circular, it's actually an opened claw with a spike like a hypodermic needle in the middle. If you were to step onto a flower urchin, you would be injected by dozens of these horrifying spikes, and the venom could be enough to kill you. The immediate symptoms of being stung by a flower urchin include blistering pain, great difficulty breathing, paralysis, and an inability to speak or control bodily functions. But because the flower urchin lives so deep in the water, There have been almost no recorded incidents of people being attacked by one, but nonetheless, these are some of the most venomous things anywhere underwater. Number 3. Mysterious Sea Serpent. A mysterious sea serpent was recently witnessed lurking off the coast of Cape Cod, and the creature was so big that, if real, it would rival any other sea monster that has ever existed in the history of the planet. It was apparently photographed by a professional shark spotter named Wayne Davis. The serpent looked to be around 300 yards long, or 900 feet. That would make it larger than over 10 sperm whales lined up one after the other. It could very well have been that Mr. Davis spotted a legendary sea creature that has somehow evaded ever being recorded even with our modern technologies. Even after the photograph blew up on the internet and everyone got their 2 cents in, nobody could deny that the shape really did look like the silhouette of an enormous monster. Nobody has yet come up with a scientific explanation, other than it was a shadow, an oil slick, a massive fishing net floating with the current, or the reflection of the tidal shelf. Sure, the shape could have definitely been just a shadow, but it would be an awful big coincidence for a shadow to be underwater in the exact same shape of a mythical sea serpent. To this day, nobody knows exactly what Mr. Davis witnessed or where the enormous monster went. But suffice to say, if real, this is definitely the most dangerous creature underwater or even on the planet. Number 2. Swordfish. Swordfish can be deadly. And what's even stranger is that the swordfish sometimes go out of their way to try and stab divers intruding in their territory with their giant sword-like noses. A scuba diver recently had a terrifying brush with death when a swordfish charged at him when the diver was walking along the ocean floor in Brazil and speared through his equipment, missing his body only by a couple of inches. The diver was taken completely by surprise as the swordfish swam towards him, obviously with the intent to impale. There was even video footage taken that showed the swordfish stuck inside the diver's equipment trying to wriggle itself free. It's not exactly clear what the diver did to the swordfish to make it so angry, but these are clearly not fish that anyone should be messing with. They literally have swords growing out of their faces. Number 1. The deadly Goliath grouper. Sharks can be pretty scary. They are big, they are thirsty for blood, and they can bite a person in half in one chomp. But there's just something about the Goliath grouper that makes it even more terrifying, and sometimes more dangerous than any species of shark. Goliath groupers can grow to be over 400 pounds. They have rows of jagged teeth made for slicing flesh. They live as near to the surface as 80 feet deep, and they are quite common off the coast of Florida. According to the Florida Museum of Natural History, Goliath groupers have actually been known to stalk humans and ambush them. Of course, these ambushes don't normally result in death, but there can certainly be injuries, and there can certainly be robberies. In a shocking video recently captured by a spear fisherman off the coast of Jupiter, Florida, a Goliath grouper can be seen charging at the man, ripping his flipper off his foot, then stealing his spearfishing equipment. Either the grouper was sick of being speared to death by floating humans, or he just really didn't like this guy. Whatever the case, the diver is exceptionally lucky that the fish didn't make off with his entire foot, and only managed to rip off his flipper. The diver did get his equipment back in the end, and to date there has been no sign of this particularly angry grouper. Number 10. Pitbull Terriers. When it comes to dogs you should fear, Pitbulls are definitely at the top of the list. Pitbull Terriers have a reputation as being the most dangerous, violent and uncontrollable of all the domesticated dog breeds. And believe it or not, this is in fact true. According to statistics, out of the 48 Americans killed by dogs in 2019, 33 of them were killed by pit bulls or pit bull mixes. Additionally, 13 out of the 33 victims were either the owner of the dog or a family member of the owner of the dog. And that's not all. Pitbull Terriers are also famous for eating their owners. And when pit bulls attack, they are far more likely than other breeds of dog to finish the job, meaning they don't just bite. When a pit bull attacks, they typically maul the person to cause serious injury or even death. And in another startling statistic, in 2019, 26 American women were killed by dogs, and 16 of them were killed by pit bulls, meaning that pit bulls are the #1 killers of women in the dog family. They also happen to be the #1 canine killers of other pets, such as dogs and cats. But unlike what you might be thinking, the danger of a pit bull does not necessarily have anything to do with the owner. According to Time magazine, it's been estimated that there are 4.5 million pit bulls in the United States, meaning they make up less than 6% of the canine population. And still, they bite more humans than any other breed. What do you think? Do you think pitbull ownership should be outlawed or more regulated? Or do you think that they have an unfair reputation? Let me know in the comments. Then, be sure to subscribe to Epic Wildlife for more animal videos. Number 9. Wolf-dog hybrids. After years of study, scientists have come to the agreement that domestic dogs indeed originated from wild wolves. Of course, this was sometime between 20,000 and 100,000 years ago. That was when humans began selectively breeding dogs for help with hunting and for protection. And this is where the wolf dog comes in as a dangerous animal, as it is a hybrid of the dog that humans spent thousands of years modifying and the original wolf. Obviously, dogs and wolves are not the same animal. So, when you have a wolf dog, which is half wolf and half dog, you're going to get a mixed bag of character traits. And unfortunately, it's true that wolf dogs can be incredibly dangerous. Because there is so much wolf in the animal's genes, it may have a tendency to try and dominate you as it grows older, and this is what happens in the wild. Also, a wolf dog is going to have significantly more energy than a normal dog. This means that it will probably have a higher tendency to do things like hunt and attack. And when it comes to playing at the park, this could result in somebody's small child swiftly becoming prey. According to the CDC, between 1979 and 1998, there have been about 14 fatalities linked to wolf dogs. Number 8. The Chihuahua. The Chihuahua is a significantly more frightening animal than people give it credit for. Yes, Chihuahuas are yippy and annoying and highly aggressive, but they can also be dangerous. A recent study reported in The Atlantic has revealed that Chihuahuas are consistently more aggressive in every situation than any other breed of dog. Out of 35 common dog breeds analysed in the study, Chihuahuas were the most aggressive dogs to other dogs that they had never seen before, making them the most standoffish out of any other breed. It's funny how the dogs with the most bark are the smallest. Of course, at the same time, Chihuahuas are ridiculously protective of their owners. It's really only strangers that need to worry about being bitten by a Chihuahua. And if you were wondering just how painful a true bite from a Chihuahua might be, you'll be pleased to know that the bite force of a Chihuahua has been estimated at around 150 pounds per square inch, which probably won't do much damage. But still, all that angry barking might give you a heart attack. I'd personally rather have a calm golden retriever or a chocolate lab, to be honest. Number 7. Rottweilers. Rottweilers are often considered to be some of the most ferocious dogs in the entire world. They have been involved in a lot of attacks on humans. The media is constantly bashing Rottweilers and telling people to be wary of them, and there have been reports that say Rottweilers are responsible for the second most human fatalities out of any breed of dog. And yes, Rottweilers are definitely temperamental. They are territorial and preferred by those seeking a guard dog. They are super protective and when trained properly can be wildly dangerous to a stranger who wandered into the wrong yard. It's also true that Rottweilers get overexcited, and this causes them to become destructive. A destructive energy mixed with an almost bipolar temperament and combined with the intense strength of the Rottweiler makes this one dog you definitely don't want to get in a fight with. Like many dogs though, it's often just because Rottweilers are defensive when they feel threatened, and it just so happens that they feel threatened very easily. Number 6. Stray dogs. Stray dogs are dangerous. You never want to mess with stray dogs, especially when they run wild in Southeast Asia. It doesn't matter what breed the dog is. If it's a stray, it could be a hazard. Take the recent story reported in Asia 1, when a cyclist had to be taken to hospital after a group of wild dogs attacked him and another cyclist in Singapore, knocking one of the men into the gutter and causing serious injuries. And believe it or not, this is actually a huge issue in many parts of the world where there are roaming bands of stray dogs. In the wild, even dogs that were bred through domestication can turn into wild beasts. They travel in huge packs of up to a dozen. They can tear apart a human in seconds, just like a pack of wolves could. And in the case of the poor cyclist, they can knock you into the gutter and send you limping to the hospital. Stray dogs may look like they need some love and affection, but let them be brought to an animal control centre or adoption centre before you try to pet them. Number 5. German Shepherds. You might be familiar with German Shepherds working in law enforcement, and this is for a good reason. German Shepherds are extremely smart dogs that can be trained to hunt down and incapacitate criminals, and they are often fearless. But this can turn them into very dangerous animals. This is especially true if the German Shepherd doesn't know you. In a horrifying case from Argentina, 7 News reported that when a 17-year-old girl gave a playful hug to her best friend's German Shepherd to get a photo taken, the dog attacked. The attack was captured in the photo shoot, showing the exact moment that the dog turned and lunged at the girl's face, completely mangling her. She ended up having to get 40 stitches in a 2-hour operation after her face was torn open by the angry dog. And of course, the owner would never have expected it. And that's because German Shepherds are generally protective of their family and highly dangerous to random people who try to hug them. Number 4. Dingo and the baby. If you've ever heard the expression, "the dingo ate my baby," you may have wondered how much validity there is to the statement. After all, did a dingo really eat a baby a long time ago to make people start saying that? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. In 1980, a dingo really did eat a baby. When the Chamberlain family went camping near the famous Ayers Rock in Australia, a dingo snuck into their tent, stole their 10-week-old baby, and ran off and ate it. Upon finding the baby gone, the mother supposedly screamed, "My God, the dingo's got my baby!" And that's where the expression comes from. But hold on to your socks, because this story gets insane. Lindy and Michael Chamberlain were found guilty in 1982 of murdering their daughter and blaming it on a dingo. It was a huge story in the 80s, and this is what really fueled the "dingo ate my baby" revolution. But the story didn't end there. In 1986, both their convictions were overturned when police found a jacket belonging to a small baby in an area that was populated by dingoes. It turned out that the dingo really did eat their baby, and both of the distraught parents were let out of jail. Just imagine losing your child and then being put in jail and accused of killing your own baby yourself. That has to be up there with the worst things that can happen to a person. But the point here is that dingoes are incredibly dangerous, and if you're camping in Australia, be sure not to let any of them in the tent with your baby. Number 3. Huskies. Huskies are some of the most beloved dogs in the world. However, huskies are also super dangerous and can do some serious damage. According to a law firm out of Philadelphia that specializes in personal injuries caused by canines, Siberian Huskies are one of the most dangerous breeds and are more often than not responsible for serious injuries that happen to children. Of course, Huskies are not nearly as dangerous as pit bulls, but between 1979 and 1998, there were allegedly 15 mauling deaths perpetrated by Siberian Huskies in the United States. And then there are Malamutes, which are larger than Huskies but often confused as being Huskies, which were responsible for 12 mauling deaths during the same period. It's not clear exactly why Huskies have such a tendency to attack children, but most dog experts will tell parents to keep their kids away from any adult Huskies, as they can apparently snap at any second. Number 2. African wild dogs. African wild dogs are some of the most brutal canines on the planet. These dogs come from Africa and are savage hunters and scavengers that should be avoided at all costs. They're quite similar to hyenas in that they travel in packs and in larger numbers can be more dangerous than lions. But even in captivity, African wild dogs should be feared. Take the case from 2012, when a young boy was mauled to death by a pack of African wild dogs after falling into their enclosure in the Pittsburgh Zoo. The Pittsburgh Zoo argued that the death of Maddox Durkosh, who had only been 2 years old at the time, was due to negligence on the part of the mother. The fact is that the mother held the child up to give him a better view of the African wild dogs in their exhibit below the observation deck. Her son lurched forward and he slipped from her grip, and the dogs had an early meal. In the end, it was just a freak accident at an enclosure of very dangerous animals. According to New York Daily News, the Pittsburgh Zoo has since removed the African wild dogs and replaced them with a cheetah. Number 1. Bull Mastiff. Bull Mastiffs are some of the largest dogs in the world. These beasts are heavy and powerful, and while a grown adult might be able to fend off an attack from a Bull Mastiff, a child definitely can't. A disturbing incident from the United Kingdom shows just how volatile and dangerous Bull Mastiffs can be. A family's Bull Mastiff had to get put down after the animal mauled a 2-year-old girl, causing serious damage to her face and almost killing her. The kid had only been playing in the kitchen when she walked past the dog, and out of nowhere, it lunged at her face and lashed on with its teeth. Apparently, the dog had belonged to the boyfriend of the 2-year-old's mother. Before the attack, nobody had any concern about the dog being near the child. It had never attacked a child before, and it was advertised as being a good family dog by the adoption agency. But this just goes to show that even a good family dog can snap unexpectedly and cause deadly harm. What's your opinion on these dangerous pups? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back soon for another great animal video.